headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Colombian forces opened fire against indigenous rights defenders in the Cauca region. At least 6 rights defenders have reportedly been injured of gunshots. Indigenous communities have denounced these attacks by Colombia's right-wing government, but authorities are blaming so-called FARC dissidents for the attack. 1 police officer is dead. These images show further evidence by the government of Iván Duque against the social and popular Minga work group that is being carried out in the Department of Cauca. Thousands of people have marched in Colombia to protest against the president's calls to revise the law to regulate the special jurisdiction for peace. Protesters rejected the intentions of President Iván Duque to modify 6 out of 159 articles in the law that would aid in implementing the 2016 peace accord with the FARC. This jurisdiction helped create a court to investigate crimes committed during the internal conflict, but it has been heavily criticized by Duque for allegedly being too weak. And earlier, similar protests in Bogotá also showed support for the indigenous and Afro-descendant communities mobilizing in the southwest. Our correspondent Tatiana Portelia was there and gave us the latest.
The President Iván Duque has announced that he will not visit the Cauca department, where an ongoing protest is being held by indigenous people, Afro-descendants and campesinos communities, and he said he will ask ministers and vice ministers to meet with the governors of the area. He also said it will be governors who will meet with the demonstrators to reach an agreement, but the leaders at this demonstration, that have reached 8 days now, are demanding President Duque to sit with them for dialogue regarding land ownership. This afternoon, the leaders of the Cauca protest are set to give a press conference in the city of Cali to report about their goals. Until now, at least 15 people have been injured due to the police repression over the weekend. Also, another national strike has been announced by teachers, which will take place on Wednesday. Right now, teachers from different public schools are meeting and have said that they are demanding the government an increase in the budget for public education and to discuss the National Development Plan.
In Mozambique, United Nations has begun distributing aid in the areas hit by Cyclone Idai. International organizations say the Buzi district was flooded after a river burst, and they fear thousands could get trapped over the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, the city of Beira has no power, and aid workers are struggling to reach the city as roads have been cut off. Many are still clinging to rooftops waiting to be rescued. The president has said more than 200 people have been killed by the storm.
You can see around us, it's atrocious weather conditions. The weather is still persisting, and despite that, everybody is helping, and we're offloading 20 tons of cargo manually by hand because the equipment has been destroyed by the cyclone.
United Nations officials say Cyclone Idai is possibly the worst weather-related disaster ever to strike the southern hemisphere. About 1.7 million people are in the path of the cyclone in Mozambique, while over 900,000 people are affected in Malawi. In Mozambique, floods have surged up to 6 meters in many areas, and several dams are almost at maximum capacity. And neighboring Zimbabwe was also hit by the cyclone. Our correspondent in capital Harare has more details about the situation there.
3 Southern African countries, Malawi, Mozambique and Zimbabwe, they are counting their losses. The 3 countries have been affected by Cyclone Idai, which has left a trail of destruction in all 3 countries. It originated from the Mozambican coast, and now Mozambican President Filipe Nyusi has said over 1,000 people have been killed, and the city of Beira has been left desolate. And now in Zimbabwe, the cyclone has also affected parts of the eastern islands in the country, where infrastructure and lives have been lost. But the government of Zimbabwe has put in $50 million towards rescue and relief efforts. It has also called in the army to help with the rescue operations. Ordinary people have also come on board, and they are saying they want to help the government in order to lessen the burden, as many people they've been expecting the government to play a critical role. But others are also saying it is also the role of ordinary people in the civic community and other corporate organizations. The government is saying all channels and all resources should make sure that we bring relief and help to the people who have been affected. And as it is, more people they are coming together in order to ascertain that people they have a better livelihood. Food has been brought to the people that have been affected, and also the issues to do with infrastructure.
And earlier we spoke with journalist Njabulu Nube from Zimbabwe, who explained why many are criticizing the government's response to the disaster.
The people believe that they should have acted earlier because the warning signs were there. The government was told last week that Zimbabwe will be attacked by the cyclone. It was a concentration area, but they didn't take measures to try and evacuate people from the low-lying regions. Hence the criticism. And secondly, the fact that the president flew out to Dubai when the cyclone started hitting hard the low-lying areas is another issue which people are not happy about.
Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has met with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump at the White House. Trump says he's strongly considering a NATO membership for Brazil. The U.S. president is also supporting Brazil's efforts to join the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The meeting between the two leaders seals a new alliance between their right-wing governments.
The relationship that we have right now with Brazil has never been better. I think there was a lot of hostility with other presidents. There's zero hostility with me, and we're going to look at that very, very strongly in terms of whether it's NATO or it's something having to do with alliance. But we have a great alliance with Brazil, better than we've ever had before.
Meanwhile, Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez is criticizing Trump, who warned Tuesday that the U.S. could impose tougher sanctions on Venezuela. Rodriguez says, quote, "I strongly reject and condemn President Trump's mechanism and imperialistic reiteration of the Monroe Doctrine. Cuba will continue to be free and socialist and will stand in solidarity with Venezuela against threats implied in phrase all options are on the table." We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Costa Rica, Indigenous leader Sergio Rojas is dead after being shot 15 times. Rojas defended the territories of the Bribri de Salitre community located in the south of the country. The UN High Commission for Human Rights in Costa Rica has called for a thorough investigation. Telling stories can bring people from different cultures closer together. And now a group of refugee women in Costa Rica have decided to write up their stories of violence and persecution in a book titled The Desire to Live. Let's listen.
Luz and Victoria are refugees in Costa Rica. They came from El Salvador fleeing gang violence and poverty.
Problems just start appearing one day without any warning. You have to make a decision at that moment, stay and be killed or leave the country.
Luz is just like hundreds of women who fled after seeing their husband be murdered. Once gang started to try to recruit her children, she found the determination to leave, despite her fears.
One thing people keep warning me about is that when I cross the border, I should keep quiet about being a refugee. But why? Is it bad to be a refugee because I'm fleeing from my own country?
Victoria also vividly remembers her life back in El Salvador, which was plagued with violence. She recognized that, as a woman, she suffered from twice the amount of violence. Now in Costa Rica, she wants to share her story.
Telling my story takes a lot of courage, a lot of strength, because as we slowly recount our lives from the beginning to this day, it feels like opening up old wounds. It's painful.
Both Luz and Victoria participate in a writing workshop where they learn how to translate their stories into poetry and prose, and were encouraged to share them with the rest of the world.
It involved teaching them what it means to look at their past, a painful past, a past full of wounds, but their stories needed to come to light, and they needed to understand why it was important to do that.
For Costa Rica's National Institute of Migration, it's important to raise awareness about refugees, both among the general population and officials working with them.
Migration in theory is very different from reality, but reading a book about refugees where they share their personal stories helps people understand them better and comprehend the suffering they experienced.
In Costa Rica, there are currently about 5,000 refugees, but authorities have received about 50,000 asylum requests, of which migration officials have only managed to process half so far.
The World Bank has approved $27 million to help construct a geothermal power plant in Dominica. The plant would provide power to around 23,000 homes. Dominica has a small power system that relies heavily on diesel to produce electricity. The island's electricity rate is among the highest in the world. The government has so far invested around $18 million in the project. The U.S. has shortened the duration of visitor visas granted to Cubans. The measure went into effect on Monday, and it reduces the validity of the B2 tourism visas from 5 years to 3 months. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel has called the move an act of aggression.
The limit on issuing visas actually makes Cubans difficult to see their relatives in the United States. Moreover, it also increased economic burdens of those who have to frequently shuttle between Cuba and United States.
The decision has restricted those on clothes selling and catering business from stocking goods of the United States. Now the private entrepreneurs in Cuba have to go to other countries for good, which may add unnecessary expenses on them.
Last week, St. Lucia put its tsunami preparedness and response plans to the test. Thousands of school students took part in a tsunami drill. The correspondent Alison Kentnish has more.
With the Caribbean being rocked by tremors over the past few months, authorities are taking serious steps to improve preparedness and assess tsunami response plans. Carib Wave, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission tsunami exercise, is seeking to improve tsunami warning system effectiveness, particularly in at-risk coastal communities. Here in St. Lucia, the exercise is based on a magnitude 6.0 earthquake associated with an eruption of the underwater volcano Kikemjeni off Grenada, which then generates a tsunami predicted to impact the west coast of St. Lucia. In the capital, Castries, a major focus is on the readiness of schools, where over 3,000 people took part.
This is our first time taking part in this activity, and so we had to attend. First there was an on-site meeting, and then we had a webinar to prepare us, where we met with other countries, persons from other countries around the region as we prepared for this. And there is an evaluation exercise afterwards to determine just how well we all did with the activity.
The school authorities say thanks to the drill, the students know what to do in the event of a tsunami.
Our school did excellently this morning. We were able to clear the school after doing all of our sweeps, make sure nobody was left behind, in a time of 1 minute and 5 seconds. We were able to get to our assembly point in 5 minutes, 28 seconds.
The exercise tested the efficiency of systems from detection and forecast to public information dissemination and response. As St. Lucia is located between two faulty tectonic plates, which makes the island prone to tsunami-generating earthquakes, the exercise was meant to build resilience and reduce loss of life. Alison Kentish, Telesur, St. Lucia.
Now to South Africa, where residents are dealing with constant power outages due to cuts. Our correspondent in South Africa, Matuba Malachi, has the latest.
South Africa's only power supplier, Eskom, is now operating on crisis mode. Eskom has introduced rotational power cuts around the country known as load shedding. So at any given time, parts of the country would be without electricity for up to 4 hours, some parts even more hours than just 4 hours. And this has been a reality for many South Africans for the past 2 weeks. And it was confirmed on Tuesday afternoon that the situation may get worse before there's a permanent solution. Now, corruption and gross mismanagement are said to be behind the crisis. And President Cyril Ramaphosa, when he came into office, intervened, appointing a new ESCOM board, but that has not yielded any results. And all South Africans are hearing at this point is how billions of dollars were looted from the power utility under former President Jacob Zuma's watch. Judging from public outrage, these power cuts that we are seeing today in South Africa on a daily basis may cost the governing party in the upcoming elections. It's back to you, studio.
We thank Matua for that report. The defeated main opposition candidate in Nigeria has challenged the election results. Atiku Abubakar has filed a legal challenge to last month's vote. The candidate for the People's Democratic Party has asked that the Electoral Commission overturns the result on the ground of irregularities. Muhammadu Buhari from the All Progressives Congress was elected for a second term on February 23rd.
My dear Nigerians,
Health professionals and workers in Algeria have marched on the streets of the capital Algiers, demanding that President Abdelaziz Bouteflika steps down. As the country commemorates the end of the War of Independence, protesters called for the president to step down amid fears he will extend his two-decade rule. Bouteflika announced last week he would not stand for another term, but on Tuesday he said he would stay in office until a new constitution is adopted.
Under no circumstances will we accept the extension of the fifth mandate, nor will we accept that the transition be done under the authority of this regime. We have had several experiences in the past where all the attempts were driven by those in power, and we have seen where that led us.
The anti-venom shortage that Kenya is currently suffering is causing hundreds of deaths. Although snake anti-venoms are effective and can be produced at scale, experts blame the weak production capacity, feeble policy, and high prices for its scarcity. Doctors Without Borders described the anti-venom shortage as a public health crisis.
South Africa stopped producing anti-venom because there's no money. And the problem is, as the world doesn't look at this problem, it is the poor person at the end of the line in the community that cannot afford it that's the person that's bitten. But unfortunately, they're not the customer. They're actually the end user. And therefore, governments and the international community really should pick that up because it's the right thing to do.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back. The Ethiopian government has postponed the national census due to a large number of people left homeless by conflict in parts of the country. Most people fled their homes because of the largely ethnic-driven conflict. The census is vital to determine the country's population and would influence the allocation of budgets for each region. The country has postponed the census twice in 2017 and 2018. Ethiopia carried out its last census in 2007. Kenyans have accused their government of ignoring drought victims following reports that at least 10 people have died due to hunger in the Turkana region. The hashtag We Cannot Ignore has been trending, calling for action from the government. The government confirmed about 1 million people are facing food shortages because of the prolonged droughts. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation has condemned the decision by an Israeli court to extend the closure of the Bab al-Rahma Mosque in the occupied city of East Jerusalem. On Sunday, the Jerusalem Magistrates Court accepted a request by the Israeli Attorney General to renew the closure of the mosque. It's one of several mosques located in Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque complex. The OIC said the court's judgment was a violation of international law and the Geneva Convention. In an unexpected move, Kazakhstan's president has abruptly resigned after almost 30 years in power. However, he will continue to lead the ruling party and keep his lifetime post as chairman of the Security Council. The 78-year-old politician has led the oil-rich Central Asian country since 1989, first as its communist leader when it was a Soviet republic, and then as president, leading up to his resignation. Protests broke out across the country in which demonstrators have accused the government of ignoring its people.
Dear Kazakhstan citizens, compatriots, comrades, today I appeal to you as I always did in the important moments of the history of our state, which we are building together. But my today's appeal is special. I have made a difficult decision to retire from responsibility of the President of Kazakhstan Republic. I was granted the status of the first president, leader of the nation. I remain chairman of the Security Council, to which the law grants serious power in determining interior and foreign policy. I remain chairman of the Nur Otan Party and a member of the Constitutional Council.
A French Roman Catholic cardinal convicted of failing to report sexual abuse is to step aside from his duties. Philippe Barbarin said Pope Francis turned down his offer to resign, but suggested he stands aside for a while. Barbarin is appealing his guilty verdict. In the meantime, he will hand over his day-to-day duties to someone else.
For a very simple reason, Pope Francis said to me, when there is a judgment that is subject to appeal, there is a presumption of innocence. Consequently, if I accept the resignation, I find you guilty. I cannot do that. This means that I understand that you want to step aside, or to take a step back. He used the Spanish term, distancia. So he told me, it's not up to me to make the decision, it's up to you. Rome does not intervene in these matters in making a provisional choice inside a diocese.
Hundreds of people took to the streets of Sacramento, California in the U.S. demanding justice for Stephon Clark. He was shot and killed by police 1 year ago. Protesters held banners and chanted Black Lives Matter, remembering the 22-year-old who was shot at least 7 times in his grandmother's backyard. The 2 officers responsible claimed Clark was armed, but later found out he was actually holding a mobile phone. The 2 officers were found not guilty by Sacramento County's district attorney on March 2nd.
There's an epidemic in the United States of police taking the lives of black men, not caring about it, sweeping under the rug, telling lies about us, and then slandering us when we're dead. It needs to stop.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram for Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.